Hello, I'm Shayne and
And I'm Katie Varner. Welcome to TMN Television on Thursday, November 14th.
Tonight we take a look at the Young Americans for Liberty's Free Hong Kong participation. We also check out part 2 of our new show, Kirksville Creeps.
And don't forget to stay tuned for our Truman Sports Update. These stories and more tonight on TMN Television. You don't want to miss this.
The ongoing protests in Hong Kong, China have captured the attention of some students at Truman State University. Young Americans for Liberty set up a table in McLean Hall Friday, November 1st, and handed out free Hong Kong buttons. Naomi Matthew, Missouri State Chair for YAL, says the organization was concerned with the Chinese government oppressing Hong Kong protesters and taking away their autonomy. The table faced some opposition from students who disliked that the YAL students were not from Hong Kong. Matthew said at one point there were 6 people crowding around the YAL table, arguing civilly but preventing YAL from talking to students. Eventually, a crowd of about 30 counter-protesters set up an opposing table displaying the Chinese flag. According to Matthew, the Department of Public Safety came due to the volume of the protests and told the groups that unless the shouting stopped, they would have to disperse, which prompted the protesters to leave. Matthew said she did not expect the organization's stance to be controversial and that YAL did not expect to encounter an opposing side. However, she said that she was glad that protesters showed up and talked to YAL because the organization is happy to hear from different sides of the issue.
Truman State University's Kirk Building is one of the oldest buildings on campus. It was built in 1923 and is named after John R. Kirk, the second longest tenured president in the school's history. The Kirk Building is located west of Blanton Nason Brewer Hall and is home to many resources for Truman students, including the Center for Academic Excellence, the Publications Office, the Writing Center, and the Language Company. On the top floor of the building is the Kirk Gym. The Kirk Gym was home to Truman State basketball games and was the main attraction for students until Pershing Building was built in 1958. Today, the gym is hardly used by student organizations. Laura Bates, Director of Student Union and Campus Activities, says that further renovations of the gym would need to occur to use it in a larger fashion.
The Socialist Rifle Association was invited to campus by students for a Democratic Society on October 24th. Topics they talked about included gun history with the working class, safety, and being politically left-leaning with gun ownership. President Alex Tackett says there's a toxic generalization that only conservatives support guns. Tackett says the SRA is more community-based and does more membership activities than the NRA. Currently, the SRA has under 30 ratified chapters in the United States.
The Truman State University farm had a worse growing season than usual, preventing the farm from providing its normal amount of food for the Kirksville community and Sodexo. University Farm Manager Bill Kuntz says the university farm produces an average of 5,000 pounds of produce each year. This season, however, was not as successful as past seasons because growing conditions were not ideal as a result of the wet spring and early summer, Kuntz says. Produce from the farm is first sold to Sodexo for their farm-to-table program and is then distributed to food pantries in town. Both Sheila Swafford, Operations Manager for the pantry of Adair County, and John Stewart, Sodexo Director of Dining Services, confirmed there is a lack of produce this season, especially sweet corn. Next up, we have our Truman weather forecast.
Stay tuned after the break for our Truman Sports Update.
I'll never forget the day our landlord called and said, "Read your lease. No pets allowed." My owner tells him my dog ate the lease, but that didn't work. And now I'm stuck in a shelter. But this pit bull is ready for a new crib. I'm loving, loyal, and play well with others. So don't be intimidated by all my muscles, because the biggest one I have is my heart. That's right, I said it.
Cross-country teams concluded the season at the NCAA Midwest Regional Race in Evansville, Indiana on Saturday. The women were led by Madeline Bostic in the 100-meter, taking 7th place, while the men were led by Thomas Cormier taking third place. The women's team scored 622 points and finished 21st. The men scored 656 points and were 22nd overall and 9th among conference schools. Bostic ran the 6K course at Angel Mounds in 23 minutes and 21 seconds. Carly Garnett was next for the Bulldogs, placing 114th with 23 minutes and 28 seconds, followed by Emma Harrelson, where she finished 23 minutes and 49 seconds and placed 127th. The men's team was led by Cormier, where he ran the 10K course in 34 minutes and 24 seconds, which put him in the 103rd place. Nathan Key followed him with 34 minutes and 45 seconds to finish 115th. Quinn Miller was the third Truman runner at 35 minutes and 21 seconds for 131st place.
The Bulldog women's basketball team will compete this Saturday in their first home game against Augustana University at 11 a.m. The team begins their season with a 2-0 lead after defeating teams in their Great Lakes Valley Conference last weekend. Sophomore Katie Clucking earned GLVC Player of the Week honors after averaging 21 points in the 2 games. Clucking had 8 of the team's 11 three-pointers in the course of the weekend. Truman was 9-2 in home games last year and won both non-conference games at home. Since 2013, Truman is 17-5 in non-conference home games. This will be the 4th time Truman has faced Augustana, and the Vikings lead with a 3-0 record coming into the game on Saturday.
The Truman Bulldogs took a 28-44 loss to the Indianapolis Greyhounds on Saturday night. Jaden Barr hit Spencer Newell for a 28-yard pass to set up the first goal, and 2 plays later, Jordan Salima ran into the end zone to give Truman the lead. TJ Edwards hit Ryan Topper for a 32-yard pass, creating a 62-yard drive to reestablish the lead for the Greyhounds. Truman will take their 8-2 record on the road for a non-conference game in the regular season finale. The Bulldogs will look to win their 9th game for only the 7th time in school history when they travel to Urbana University next Saturday at noon in Urbana, Ohio.
This has been your Truman Sports Update.
Be sure to stay tuned after the break for Kirksville Creeps and Real People.
Families come in all sizes and shapes. Sometimes your friends are your family by choice, or sometimes you're just stuck with Uncle Charles. But what we know is that you want to protect the people that are close to you, but the flu can unravel everything. Your flu vaccine protects you and your family. No matter what draws your family together, protect yourself, protect your family. Everyone needs a flu vaccine.
We are continuing our ongoing investigation into the creepy happenings in town. Join reporter Katie Varner as she investigates the paranormal at the Kirksville Cemetery for a second installment of Kirksville Creeps.
Join us as we explore the dark, the strange, and the unexplained. Join us as we hear the unsettling tales of encounters with the unknown and the truth behind Kirksville's most hair-raising destinations. Join us for Kirksville Creeps.
One of Truman's most popular horror destinations, especially around Halloween, is found in the Highland Park Cemetery. It is known as the Devil's Chair.
The legend with the Devil's Chair is that if you sit on it on midnight, anytime besides Halloween, if you're worthy, like a good person, then you won't go to hell. But if you are a bad person, then you'll get dragged down to hell. But if you sit on it on Halloween at midnight, then you'll automatically get dragged down to hell.
I'm sure there's different variations on the story, but the most popular theme is if you sit in the chair under a full moon, then you will die within a month.
Folklorists talk about people acting out their folklore when the folklore involves a component of people doing something like going to train bridge. That's called ostension, and specifically going someplace that's associated with a legend. It's called legend tripping, and the highlight legend tripping destination for Kirksville, and it's especially a matter of this for college students, is the Baird Chair Monument in Highland Park Cemetery. The students have a legend that has 2 variations. It's always the same. You have to go visit the chair at midnight. Now, it might be Halloween, it might be New Year's Eve, And if you sit on the chair at midnight, either something terrible happens because you've offended the spirits, or something wonderful happens because you've been bold, you've been brave. And that's the way that stories always branch in folklore. It actually isn't a gravestone. It's simply a monument. And many years ago, I tracked down a newspaper story from the 1890s in the Kirksville Daily Express that talked about an interesting chair sculpture that was on display in a downtown shop. The shop actually belonged to this stonecutter, Mr. Baird. And this was simply a decorative ornament that he made. It also belongs to a really large class of objects that get called devil's chairs all over the Midwest. And they were originally intended for people to come and sit on them and meditate and remember their loved ones. College towns often have some spooky lore associated with them. College towns almost always develop a certain number of ghost stories, and the general thinking is that because college students are not really rooted in the community, building those traditions helps them imagine themselves as being more rooted, and gives them more of a feeling of being at home, simply that they have their own traditions.
Of the traditions passed down the generations of Truman students, exploring the old cemeteries around Kirksville has been a long-standing favorite. One cemetery in particular, Sloan's Point, carries with it a haunting legend.
So all I know is that a few miles outside of town there's a cemetery full of kids and babies, and it's really sad if you think about it. So you're supposed to go full into the cemetery, shut the gate, then you're supposed to go down to the bottom of the hill, and by the tree there's like a set of like triplets that died at the same time from 40, 50 years ago, and you're supposed to stay there and like look at their graves and like talk to them and stuff, and just like walk around and be away from your car for like 20 minutes or something, and then theoretically you're supposed to come back and there's supposed to be baby handprints all over your car. And my best friend's mom did it, and she is like pretty superstitious about that stuff, and it was true. Like, she kept the handprints on her car for like a week or so after, so I saw them in their pictures and stuff, and she like washed her car before, so it's like, where did the dust come from? Like, where are these handprints? Creepy business.
Like so many cemeteries of that era, the mortality rate for children was not really great. So of course there's a lot of children buried there, which is the case in any old cemetery. But for that one has somehow gotten this legend that they're child ghosts. And some call it the child cemetery, but it's not. It's just a normal cemetery. Which, an interesting fact about that one, we also did research on that. In the Historical Museum, Kirksville Historical, there is a photograph of the residents of Sloan's Point. All the residents of Sloan's Point, which no longer exists, it was right down on the Sheraton River, they had all gone to Novinger to have their picture taken together as a town. And so you look at this picture, and then you can find some of the names on the headstones in the cemetery. Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Join us next time on Kirksville Creeps as we investigate the site of one of the most cold-blooded murders in Kirksville history, and what was left behind.
Tonight, we take a look at the new installment of our recurring series, Real People, with Sam Elkins. This week's film is Dr. Sleep.
Hello and welcome back to Real People. This is episode 7, Dr. Sleep Review. I'm your host, Sam Elkins, and I'm joined today by the one and only Autumn Hines. Right off the bat, this is a spoiler-free video, so if you have not seen the movie, you're safe to continue. Okay, so right off the bat, initial thoughts. What did you think of the film?
I loved it. Like, I honestly thought that it was everything that I needed The Shining to be in terms of balance with the book and like the cinematography. I loved it. I think it was very well done.
Mm-hmm. I really much enjoyed it. You know, Dr. Sleep is based on the Stephen King novel, the sequel to The Shining, and I had read The Shining, the book, and seen The Shining movie, but that was years ago, and I've not read Dr. Sleep, but going into the movie, from what I remember from the book and the original Shining, it felt like a very nice balance between Stephen King and also paying homage to Kubrick's vision of The Shining.
Yeah, that was something that I noticed. Was I wondered what they were going to do in terms of acknowledging the movie version of The Shining, but I liked the fact that they acknowledged that the movie existed and had been made, while also staying very true to the book.
But that was one thing that I wasn't totally expecting, was for them to like directly acknowledge The Shining. Like, I didn't think they were gonna like sweep it under the rug, but I thought it would be more just like referenced than like specifically like shown in like certain ways. And I thought that was effective, and I thought that like all the actors in the film did really well. Ewan McGregor really shined, and Rebecca Ferguson, who plays the villain of the film, Rose, she was incredible.
She played that role perfectly.
Yeah.
Like, she had the attitude for it, and she had like the maniacal vibe that was very like ever present, but also she did the whole like I'm fake charming you thing very well too, which was key for her character.
Yeah.
I appreciated it.
Yeah, no, I was shocked because in the trailer for the film, and I don't think the trailer did the film justice, and in the trailer, when they showed her character, that kind of made me not very excited for the film so much, because I don't know, the whole like magician's hat look, it looked a little weird at first. I was like, I don't know if anybody can really pull that kind of look off and not make their character like a caricature almost. And then she just seemed very like a run-of-the-mill villain, just like, and then like the eyes glowing and everything. I was like, oh, okay. But when I watched the film, she pulled that off incredibly. Like, she as a character was not a conventional villain.
Right. But whenever I was seeing like posters and trailers for the movie, I was like, oh, they're just trying to go for like the whole gypsy vibe, like we go from like camp to camp vibe. But there was a certain like emphasis on like her power in what she wore, and the fact that it was so casual, but so like, I run this place and I am in charge, and I was like, yes, like she just pulled it off so well.
Yeah. And for its runtime, the film did not seem, in my opinion, it didn't seem very long.
It didn't.
It didn't seem short, but it did not drag at all. I thought it had a nice pace. I think it went from act to act very well, and each one was entertaining. And it's definitely a movie that I want to go see again.
Oh, for sure. That was one of the things that I loved about it in comparison to The Shining, because I think The Shining moved so slowly, which is like typical of like a Kubrick film, but the book wasn't like that at all, and so I was like, they chose to cut key things for the sake of that slow pacing, and we didn't see that in Dr. Sleep, and I loved that, and I very much so appreciated that.
Yeah, but it still had those sweeping, establishing shots with the long, droning music. I always loved the iconic Requiem Mass song, you know, that like is from The Shining, and they opened the movie with it. That always gives me chills. And so I really like that they used that, and they like had different variations of that, like especially like toward the end. Like overall, I think this is like a great mixture of Stephen King, classic Stephen King elements, paying homage to Kubrick's vision of The Shining, and also I thought that Mike Flanagan, the writer and director, really infused his own talent into it as well. For those of you who don't know, Mike Flanagan wrote and directed the Haunting of Hill House series on Netflix. Yeah.
Then go see it. It was really good. Definitely worth a watch.
Yeah. So that's all the time we have today for Real People, Episode 7, Dr. Sleep Review. I've been Sam Elkins, and this has been Autumn Hines. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to view the full spoilery version, check that out on TMN Television's YouTube page. Next week, I will be reviewing Ford v Ferrari with Matt Damon and Christian Bale. So check that out. It'll be a lot of fun. So thanks for watching.
Thank you for tuning in with us tonight. For complete news coverage, be sure to stay tuned to KTRM, pick up a copy of the Index, and look at Detour Magazine's latest adventure online. Don't forget to also check out our news content on tmn.truman.edu.
You can also follow TMN on Facebook and Twitter for breaking news updates. And if you missed part of our broadcast tonight, check out TMN TV on YouTube. If you've ever thought about being on TV, be sure to head on over to tmn.truman.edu/apply to fill out an application today. And don't forget to come back next week for our third installment of Kirksville Creeps.
From all of us here at TMN, thank you for tuning in and have a great rest of the week.